Hey there, the Games Apprentice back with another video. Now stop wasting your friends' time making them play Mario Kart, GoldenEye and Smash Brothers for the millionth time. There's a whole world of multiplayer games out there. Those games are great, but maybe there's more. What are the 10 best competitive 4-player indie games, and have you heard of them all? Let's find out. Now if you've already watched my top 10 indie games of all time video, you'll probably know what's going to be at number 1 today. That still leaves 9 other fantastic games to play with your friends and family. The criteria for this one is they've got to be pick up and play, they don't need much of a tutorial, and you've got to be able to play them in one session. Everything here has got to be fairly short, it's got to be local play. You've only got to have 1 copy of the game, 4 controllers and 3 friends. All this stuff I've played and captured on the Nintendo Switch, but they are on other platforms too. So without further ado, here they are ranked from 10 to 1. Just scraping onto this list is probably the most well-known game on here. Gang Beasts is a 3D physics-based fighting game with ragdoll effects. Each player chooses the design of their character and then they go to war in one of the game's various game modes. What makes Gang Beasts so much fun is how difficult the controls are and the design of the levels. You can move, jump, punch, kick, grab and headbutt, which all sounds easy on paper, but once you get into the game and someone won't let go of your leg or you accidentally get your hand stuck to the wall, it becomes utter chaos. Once you get the hang of the controls, you'll start to be able to pick your opponent up after you've knocked them out and throw them to their doom, or slowly climbing back up the side of a truck when everyone's thought you'd fallen off to your death. It's amusing to both play and watch, and what it lacks in depth, it makes up for in laughs. This game fits the very definition of a pick up and play game for anybody. Its controls are similar to the game Asteroids. You can accelerate and spin your ship and shoot, but instead of fighting asteroids, you're fighting each other. Ships are destroyed with one single shot, and the pilot of the ship is then left to float or swim around in space. If they survive long enough, the ship will respawn. To make it even more interesting, power-ups will appear throughout the level, such as proximity mines, shield, and the amazing joust sticks that allow you to easily ram through your enemies. This game is a lot of fun for anybody, it's competitive, and it's definitely worth checking out. A unique concept, Ultimate Chicken Horse is like a multiplayer Mario Maker. You get a small 1-level screen, and your goal is to get to the finish. At the start of each round, everyone picks an item from the box that are either platforms or traps, and then places them somewhere on that level. The aim is to basically create a level that's not too easy, but also not impossible. If everyone finishes a level, no one gets any points. If you finish the level, you'll get points for finishing, as well as any additional points for every player that was killed on one of your traps. With each round, the level becomes more packed with traps and platforms, leading to numerous routes to try. With the number of items and everyone's own input, no 2 levels are ever the same. Ultimate Chicken Horse is a memorable experience, to say the least. I said one of the criteria is that it needs to be simple to play, and that's the only reason Crawl isn't higher up this list. It is fairly simple to play, but not to the point where you could just jump straight in with no explanation. And the game knows this because it forces you down a long tutorial for player 1 to do the first time you play it. So make sure that you fire it up before you've got your friends round. Crawl is a 3 vs 1 dungeon crawler in which one person is trying to make their way through the dungeon, and the rest of the players control spirits that possess objects in each room, or summon monsters to control and attack the hero with. If one of the 3 enemy players kills the human player, they then take their place. As a human player, you'll need to level up by defeating enemies and find coins to spend on upgrades for your character. Once you've got to level 10, you can then challenge the boss and try and win the game. Whilst a spirit player, you earn Wrath, which can be used at the end of each floor of the dungeon to buy stronger monsters for you to summon. Controls wise, the game's fairly straightforward. You move around with the stick, you've got one button for attack and one button for your special. The best thing about Crawl is that even if you're not particularly good at it, you can still have a lot of fun. If you're rarely good enough to become the human player, that means you're going to be building up a lot of wrath, so you're going to be able to upgrade some really cool monsters. Crawl's a really unique game that isn't quite as universal as the other games on this list, but if you've got 3 friends that are up for it, it's well worth checking out. When it came to multiplayer console design, 2013's Android-based console, the Ouya, was absolute garbage. As an early adopter of it, I was humiliated by it multiple times when trying to set it up with 4 controllers in front of my friends and having Bluetooth issues and configuration issues galore. Looking back, it seemed madness that I even bothered, but there were 3 reasons why I did, and even nearly 10 years later, those 3 reasons all make my favourite indie multiplayer games of all times list. The first of them on that list is Duck Game. This is a deathmatch shooter that's filled with power-ups, but it's also a platformer that's full of ducks in hats. In Duck Game, you need to hunt down your opponents throughout the increasingly wacky levels by using a range of weapons scattered throughout the level, ranging from shotguns to chainsaws. The levels can be really quick in this one, but they load in and out fast, making it a very fast-paced game. It's fun and frantic and has tons of charm with its ducks, as well as the fact that it's presented as a TV show, with the ducks for some reason throwing boulders a distance to indicate their score, complete with overly excited duck pundit and instant replay montage, as well as duck fans. It's both competitive and hilarious, everything about it just works. The weirdest entry on this list is definitely Nippon Marathon. If you've not heard of this before, this one is a racing game where you're on a Japanese game show. The gameplay itself, I guess, mostly resembles something like the early Micro Machines games. The action all takes place on one screen, and when you're far enough ahead, you'll get the win for that section. What makes this game so good is just how silly it is. You pick up weapons as the runners, consisting of homing missile watermelons, giant banana skins, pineapples that work like helium balloons, and mushrooms which seem to give off toxic gas. The levels are amusing too, as you're basically running through Japan, but while some people are cheering you on, others are just going about the business, like crossing the street, or you end up getting chased by dogs and end up running through a construction site and through other people's offices. Randomly throughout the game, you might also get beamed into a bonus round, such as a maze or get interviewed, and your interview questions affect your popularity, which for some reason matters. Playing Nippon Marathon with 3 friends and a straight face is pretty much impossible. You have to play this one for yourself, as it's as much fun to play as it is to watch. The Jackbox Party Packs are pretty well known thanks to Lockdown, and it has some fantastic games on them. However, there's one game that's heavily inspired by Jackbox that's my absolute favourite within that genre, and that's What the Dub. What the Dub is a standalone game that follows the same mould, where you use your phone or tablet to log into a website, enter a code, and type stuff in. You can have up to 6 players with this one, but anything above 3 is fine. In each round, a short clip will play from a real film, with some of the dialogue missing. Players then type in humorous bits of dialogue to fill the gaps, and then the film clip is replayed with those bits of dialogue dubbed in. Then everyone votes on which one they like the best. Obviously, like most Jackbox games, a lot of the enjoyment here is going to come from you and your friend's sense of humour and wit, but it definitely makes for a memorable game. There's over 500 clips, so it's got tons of longevity. And there's plenty of options too to suit your needs, such as increasing the length of time you've got to input the text, or replaying the clips multiple times, so you've got a better chance to take it all in. It's a fun game that, even with all the Jackbox offerings, still manages to feel unique.
Dreams I'm gonna crush.
The second Ouya original on this list is Hidden in Plain Sight. It took this one 4 years to transition from the Ouya to other home consoles. and that time just felt like forever because it's so good and I was dying to show it off to more people. The aim of Hidden in Plain Sight is to hide your character amongst a bunch of NPCs, whilst fulfilling out various objectives. The NPCs move like badly programmed early video game sprites, walking in straight lines or walking into walls, so to avoid standing out, you need to do the same. The other player or players need to figure out which one you are and eliminate you. It's such a simple concept that it's unique and it works incredibly well. There's a lot of skill to walking like an NPC, but at the same time fulfilling your objectives as efficiently as possible. From the other side of the fence, depending on that skill level, it can take a keen eye to spot your friend as you look out for one frame of movement that just doesn't quite fit with what everything else is going on. One blink and you can miss it. Anyone I introduce to this game always wants to play more. Other games have tried to imitate it. There's a game on Game & Wario on the Wii U which has a similar concept, and also an indie game called Unspottable, which is fine but just not quite on the same level as this one. Hidden in Plain Sight feels like a multiplayer game that just doesn't know how good it is. Whether it's the long time it took to get ported over to popular consoles, or the fact that its icon on the Switch and other consoles wants you to be ashamed of its existence with its ugliness. But when you take off its glasses, change it out of its paint-covered overalls and let down its hair, it's hard to deny that Hidden in Plain Sight is all that. What a ridiculously out-of-date movie reference, but I'm leaving it in. Just missing out on the top spot is Tricky Towers, and with a less dexterous crowd it would have been my go-to game. On first glance, Tricky Towers looks like a colourful version of Tetris, but in reality it's a very different genre of game. Whereas Tetris is more about clearing lines, Tricky Towers is all about building. It's almost like a reverse Jenga. There are 3 different game modes for this game. The first one's probably my least favourite, and it's like a puzzle game. In this one you're trying to build the lowest tower possible, using the most pieces possible. You need to keep the tower below the line, and any pieces that fall off will raise the tower up a bit. Creatively wedging pieces into gaps in the tower is key here, to create width, as well as resisting being too ambitious. The second game mode is Survival. In this mode you've got a set number of pieces to get rid of. The first one to get rid of them all is the winner, however if 3 pieces fall then you're out. The final game mode is my favourite game mode, and that's the race. Your tower needs to be a certain height, and the first one to get that height, and for the tower not to fall over for 3 seconds, they're the one that wins. But, no pun intended, there's a balancing act with this one, because making your tower as sturdy as possible, whilst also taking chances just to get some height as fast as you can. Power-ups appear in some game modes, which can either hinder your opponent or help you out. There's also some special modes which bring in things like wind, meaning that you've got to build your tower against the wind in a certain direction. It's a really fun game that anyone can enjoy that's often overlooked. TowerFall would have been a great name for the previous game, but unfortunately it was already taken by the best game on the Ouya, and this is one of my favourite indie games of all time, and it's easily my favourite 4-player local indie game. This one ended up coming to Steam, PlayStation Plus, Xbox One, but the best version is definitely the Nintendo Switch version, which supports up to 6 players. TowerFall is a game that's easy to play, but difficult to master. It's a competitive deathmatch game where each player has a bow and 3 arrows. Your controls consist of fire an arrow, jump and dodge. Time the dodge perfectly and you'll both block and gather any arrows that are about to hit you. If you get hit by an arrow or someone jumps on your head, you're killed and eliminated from that round. What makes the game so good is just how perfect it controls. It's a fantastically tight platformer where you'll never be blaming the game's controls for your mishap. It can be fast and frantic or slow and methodical depending on how the players play. There are holes in the side and top of the screen like Pac-Man, so you're always in danger of being ambushed no matter where you are, as well as power-ups throughout the game such as shield, wings and a multitude of wacky arrow types. As a one-on-one game, TowerFall is pretty good, but once you've got 3 or more, it's incredibly fun and challenging, and it'll keep you coming back for more. So those are my top 10 4-player local competitive indie games. Hopefully there's something in there that you've not seen before. Let me know what yours are in the comments. I'm always on the lookout for more things to play, and I'll be back with more videos like this. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and click subscribe for more of my reviews, rankings and hidden gems. I'll catch you next time.